located on the eastern part of the site. Public rights-of-way are located around the clay stocking site with footpaths P39, P22 and P23 running along the southwest and northern boundaries of the site. The planning application seeks to vary the following conditions of the existing planning permission. Condition 4, to extend the date for retention of the clay stocking area in Phase 1 until the 31st of July 2023, and extend the completion of the final restoration and all planting works in Phase 1 to the 30th of September 2024. Condition 15, to permit the importation of soils and soil-making materials. And conditions 30 and 31, to extend the dates for the provision of the detailed restoration schemes for phases 1 and 2 until the 31st of July 2023. This slide shows an aerial view looking eastwards towards Donington Island. There's been one representation from the public, and that's commenting about the delay in the restoration of the site and the amount of time the applicant has been allowed to submit the application. With regard to the variation of condition 15, permission is sought for the importation of 25,000 metres cubed of soils and soil-making material for the restoration of the site. There are no alterations proposed to the existing site access arrangements or vehicle movements, and it's recommended that a condition is used to secure the submission of details prior to their importation of the origin and type of material to be imported. Securing this by condition is in accordance with policy DM12 of the Leicestershire Minerals and Waste Local Plan. There are no alterations proposed as part of this application to the final restoration date for Phase 2, which is end of December 2033. This is not the first extension of time for the restoration of Donington Island, and this application would further delay the restoration of the site. This would not accord with the NPPS drive to have sites restored at the earliest opportunity. However, this must be balanced against securing the use of important minerals. Fire clay is recognised as an important national resource, with Donington Island providing approximately half of the national fire clay supply. As part of the existing planning permission, a restoration scheme was submitted to the Minerals Planning Authority last year. However, the details were insufficient and didn't accord with the Minerals and Waste Local Plan and the existing legal agreement. Since this time, discussion has taken place between the applicant, the Minerals Planning Authority, County Council Landscape and Ecology Officers and the National Forest. In addition, it's worth highlighting that in April 22, earlier this year, the National Forest Charitable Trust merged with the National Forest Company. So due to these recent changes and to enable a high standard restoration plan to be submitted, more time is sought by the applicant to work with the National Forest to design a restoration scheme which facilitates its future uses and accords with the requirements of the NPPF, the Minerals and Waste Local Plan and the existing legal agreement. The delay in the restoration, the retention of the stockpiles and importation of soils will result in the site operating for a longer period than previously permitted, extending the period of impact the site will have on the local environment and community. However, the existing planning conditions do have appropriate measures to protect against unacceptable impacts on the amenity and health of people and the environment, and therefore the proposal is acceptable in accordance with policy DM2 of the Leicestershire Minerals and Waste Local Plan and D2 of the North West Leicestershire Local Plan. So to summarise, it's acknowledged that by allowing this proposal, there will be a delay in the submission of the restoration scheme for the whole site and the overall restoration of Phase 1. However, this delay has been balanced against securing the use of valuable minerals and the opportunity to create a restoration scheme that is of a high environmental standard. It's considered that the various measures contained within the planning application, together with the imposition of conditions and a legal agreement covering HGV routing, transfer of land, public access and aftercare management, will mean that the proposed development would not cause an unacceptable impact to local residents and the local environment. And therefore it's recommended that the proposed development be permitted, subject to the conditions set out in Appendix 1 and the completion of an updated legal agreement. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Oliver. Local member Robert Ashman hasn't sent any comments on this application. So we move and open to members then, please. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it brief. I'm happy to move the recommendation. Thank you.
Keith.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You mentioned HGV route access and egress. I couldn't find it on the planning portal. If you could possibly send a link where I can find it, because my biggest concern is the HGVs ignoring the access egress route, because they do their costings to deliver the soil on the cheapest, shortest route possible. And if they don't get a copy of that preferred access route, which they never seem to get, you'll be getting, the hotline will be ringing with residents saying, well, we've got all these trucks going past my front door. So if you could send it to me, and I'll prepare a communication with Robert to make sure the local people know exactly where the route is and hopefully stop them from going the wrong way. Thank you.
Oliver, would you like to comment on
that? No comment as such, but yes, more than happy to send the HGV routing over to you.
Thank you.
I mean, I haven't personally heard any problems with the HGV traffic and that around that area. So, Rosita.
Thank you, Chairman. So I've had a couple of questions, but the first one is answered. There is a routing agreement in place, right? So do we know how many lorry movements there will be and, you know, going in? Do we know whether the roads will be checked prior? Because if you're putting an extra amount of lorry movements onto the road network, there will be probably extensive damage to the road network. So has that been considered? And you did mention you would like to see submission of details of what is being imported as per soil, because I've been in my division that sometimes, you know, the soil, the importation of the soil is not like we would like it to be. So will that be monitored? And I am not clear what you said. There will be a delay of the restoration. So what are the dates when the restoration will be starting, and what is the plan for after the extension has been granted? Thank you.
Goodness there, Oliver.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to respond to each one of those in turns. I've noted them down, but if I've missed anything, please do let me know. So in terms of the HGV numbers, they are they're set out in condition 9. There is what is allowed is an average of 88 HGV movements per day over a 5-day working period. So it might be that on some days it might be slightly higher than that, as long as on other days it's lower than that, and over a 5-day working period it doesn't exceed 88. That's an existing condition and it's being retained, so there isn't any change in HGV movements from the current situation. That's going to be maintained at existing levels. In terms of road condition, we've consulted with the Highways Authority as part of this, and they've not sought any kind of contributions towards maintenance of roads, etc. And I think it's fair to say that's because there's not going to be any changes in terms of HGV numbers. Soil making materials, that is also to be secured by condition. So condition 16 requires the submission of details of the origin, storage, movement, handling, use, and type of material that will be used for soils and restoration on the site. And something that we do as officers is we monitor our minerals and our waste sites. So the case officer that's responsible for this site will go out over the course of the restoration to make sure that it is being carried out in accordance with the approved details. And then I think the final question was in relation to dates for restoration. And I appreciate there were quite a number of different dates dotted about. So I think that the date for the restoration of phase 1, because the site's split into two different halves, is 2024. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, so for phase 1, the restoration deadline is September 2024. And that is an extension of time as part of this application. The restoration date for phase 2 is 2033, December 2033, but that's not something that's being changed as part of this application. That is the existing date as per the current permission, and there's no change sought to that. Hopefully I've worked through all of those questions.
You did. Thank you very much. I just if I may come back through you, Chairman. So if we're extending to phase 1 to 2024 and the restoration is supposed to be finished by 2024, surely is that compatible or is that achieved?
Only that.
Well, it's certainly it's what the applicant, it's kind of in the applicant's gift for them to apply for what they believe is achievable. So they, through this process, the restoration time period was earlier, and they've applied for the amount of time that they think is necessary in order to complete the restoration period.
Okay. Neil?
Thank you, Chairman. And just following on from Oliver's remarks about what the applicant believes is achievable, noting the extensions that's been asked for, is there a confidence now in between the discussions between the officers and the applicant that these extension applications are realistic and there is very unlikely to be another application for a further extension in the future?
Thank you, Mr. Bannister. It's a really good point, and we have had a number of extensions here, and we recognise the fact that delaying restoration is well, the NPPF seeks to have restoration at its earliest opportunity, and it's not something that we look upon favourably in delaying restorations. I think it's fair to say that there have been a number of circumstances over the past few years that have led to these restorations, kind of one after the other. I believe Brexit in previous applications has been noted as something that's caused delays. The pandemic has also previously caused delays to the restoration of this site. And then also, I think the kind of latest application references some of the changes to the National Forest Company and their desires to work closely with the applicant to deliver a more wholesale restoration scheme, and they want to have a bit more time in order to do that. So each time we have kind of recognised the circumstances that have led to the delays and justified our position in recommending approval for the delay. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't say for definite that another application can't come forward. I hope that this time the restoration will take place in line with what has been applied for. But if it doesn't and they apply again, they would need to provide justifiable reasons that we think are justified for the delay. And obviously we'd come with a recommendation, and ultimately it would be for DCRB to decide whether they thought those reasons were justifiable in granting, and if not, then a refusal would be the other option.
Okay. Right, and we've got a mover, Mr. Allen, who moved the application. Is there a seconder for that? Mr. Grimley, did you?
Yeah, I'll second the application, the recommendation.
Yeah, thank you. Did you want to speak, or okay? If there's no one else wishing to speak, we'll move to the vote on this item then. All those in favour of the recommendations? I think it's unanimous, but is anyone against the recommendations? No, that looks to be passed and carried then. Moving on to item number 8, which is regarding county parks bylaws. This has been headed by Anthony Cross and Richard Hunt, head of county parks. Oh, you're there, Richard. Well done. Would you like to do your presentation then, Richard? And I don't know whether Anthony, you coming in later or...
No, if I may, thank you, Chairman. I'll come in first just to
Okay.
remind the board that with your regulatory hat on, this is one of those more unusual type of reports that you come to consider in connection with an important matter, although it's a little bit dry, of updating the bylaws. And with that, I'll hand over to Richard. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. You've got a copy of the paper today, which sets out to you a proposal to reform the bylaws in the County Council's country parks portfolio. These bylaws were last revised back in 2003, and so we're seeking to update them. The reasons for that are twofold. Firstly, that there's been quite a lot of change in the world since 2003 in visitor behaviour on our parks, also in technology, changing trends, things like that, and a number of issues that we want to capture better within the existing bylaws. And also a motion of full council back in September 2020, particularly around sky lanterns and their release within our country parks. So we're covering off all of those within the bylaws, and we're seeking your approval to update the bylaws before a 12-week consultation. The main elements that we're looking to change are contained within point 5 and are around better defining electrically powered cycles, prohibiting use of barbecues and camping stoves and sky lanterns, so prohibiting without permission any form of fire being lit on any of our country park sites. Also better clarity around the use of model boats, around dogs, use of model electric cars, aircraft and drones, and also improving the clarity on permission for flyers, graffiti, musical entertainment and firearms within the country parks service. The bylaws are in draft form in Appendix A, and the list of parks that these will cover is listed in Appendix B. We have informally consulted with the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities, who have oversight of bylaws, and will continue to keep them informed throughout the process. After the conclusion of the consultation, a further report will be brought back to this board to detail the next steps. So we're recommending that we proceed with a 12-week consultation on these bylaws, and that we consult also informally with various statutory bodies that are listed in the paper, and that we report back to this committee on the outcome of the consultation and the next steps.
Thank you, Richard. That's well done and brief. Thank you. There's a recommendation on page 35 for this item. Does anybody like to speak on this item? Oh. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the brief, Richard. Just one thing on 5A, the inclusion of definition of electrical powered cycles. Is it prudent to include the scooters on that as well as, or certainly add that into there as well? Thank you.
Thank you. That's exactly the reason for including that element, was to make sure we had the definition properly set out between an electric pedal cycle, which is welcome on our parks in places where pedal cycles are welcome, and an electric scooter, which are not welcome on our country parks in places where pedal cycles are welcome. And as some members will know, the line between the two is quite fine, and so we wanted to better set that out so our rangers are empowered to enforce that properly. So that's exactly the point of that element.
Rosita.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm more than happy to support this. It makes sense. However, as I'm only a sub today, I would like, because I know we're consulting, how do you foresee this to be enforced? It's an awful lot, and enforcement is always difficult. And I'm only trying to pick your brain here. And also, there are an awful lot of bylaws. How are you going to communicate that to the public? I mean, are you going to think of a sign on every tree? It's only because I'm nosy and I'd like to ask you that, but I'm happy to recommend approval.
Oh, right, thank you.
So on the point of enforcement, historically, we have never been going around our sites enforcing the bylaws in a heavy-handed manner. They're mainly used as a method for us to be able to work with the public, but it gives us the ability to then afterwards have conversations with the police in order to enforce better. So we're not proposing that these bylaws become a kind of license to our rangers to be going around doing heavy-handed enforcement, but rather it's another tool in that conversation we have with the public. And it's very much part of the skill set of a ranger to be able to encourage the right behaviour in our parks, and the bylaws are a part of that. In terms of how we promote them, we do display bylaws on some of our parks in some places. However, again, it's about getting a satisfactory balance between not wanting to appear too heavy-handed and legalistic by displaying them on every tree. So we do have them displayed in some of our parks, and we do make them available for inspection by the public should they wish to do so.
Okay, Mr. Filliman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to follow on from my colleague about e-scooters, and I would suggest, plead, that it is absolutely specific and not left open to interpretation. Sadly, for one of my worlds, I was reading up on section 59s yesterday, and even though it can be used for errant behaviour, actually, if I was a 15-year-old child, youth riding an e-scooter, I would never assign and assimilate what section 59 says to what I'm actually riding as an e-scooter. So for me, sadly, in one of my other words, I'm doing exactly this thing because of those issues. And therefore, I'd also suggest, if I may, that that is actually extended and very specifically to include powered go-karts, which are a new craze, which can go incredibly fast. And if we, I'm all for tightening up on these. So could I humbly suggest, if it's possible, that we're a bit more specific about e-scooters in particular,
and powered go-karts. Because if I read what we have here, A to J, I can't see it. And if I can't see it, there's every reason to say, sorry, Gov, didn't know anything about it. So just for that. And then really being really badly pedantic, 5D, I have a horrible sneaky fishing that fireworks is a single word.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you, Chair.
Richard.
I'm happy to go away and try to find a suitable definition of e-scooters and electric go-karts. If we can find something that can work, then we'll be able to look to include that. And point taken on fireworks. I suspect Mr. Phillimore is correct.
So it sounds like.
Yeah, sure. Mr. Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. I genuinely support this, and I do just have a quick question, because this is something we're putting in place in my ward or in my division. We have Watermead Country Park that straddles the city as well. Is this going to be compatible with what they're doing in the city? I mean, will the rules be the same? Will it be a case of you can do one thing in one area, cross the line and do that, or will there will be sort of made compatible that the bylaws relate to what's going on this city side as well, because there's no real boundary between the two.
That's a very good point that Mr. Grimley makes, particularly for Watermead. I don't see that any of these will be in any way contradictory to what the City Council allow on their parks. They use a slightly different model set of bylaws to us, just for various different regulatory reasons, but I don't see this being in any way contrary to anything that they permit or don't permit.
Mr. Bannister.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, clearly we've not looked at these bylaws for almost 20 years. So an awful lot has indeed happened, and I'm fully supportive of updating them. I've read through the proposed bylaws, which are going to go out for consultation. I was just looking at proposed bylaw number 27 about musical entertainment, and I understand what is the thrust behind this, but on a very literal interpretation, I can see one member of the public saying, am I not allowed to sing in a country park? Am I not allowed to tell a joke in a country park, because that might be conceived to be entertainment? And you might get those people that have that sort of literal interpretation for it. And I appreciate fully, Richard, what you've said about we're not going to be heavy-handed in terms of enforcement. But I do wonder if you could insert the words after entertainment, quote, to the general public, unquote. And then it is quite clear that if a parent wants to sing a lullaby to their child in a country park, they're not breaching a bylaw and so on. Can I just leave that with you?
Anthony.
Well, Mr. Bannister makes a very fair point. We're slightly constrained, though, I have to say, because these are sort of model bylaws. They do have to follow a pattern set by the relevant government department. I think we'll certainly have a go with adopting that suggestion and see how far we get. Whether we get it approved by the Secretary of State is another matter. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Well, it was been proposed by Rosita and seconded by Mr. Allen. We move the recommendations. Are you happy to move the recommendations as they are printed, but also for Richard to tweak any comments that we've made here this afternoon, so that we can just be clear where we are with it? So if everyone is happy to do that, I'll move the move to a vote then, which is recommendation as it is. All in favour of that? That looks to be unanimous. I must ask, is anyone against it? Thank you. So that's carried. Thank you, Richard. Thanks for coming. Move on to item number 9 then, which is the revised members planning code of practice. That's been covered by Anthony and Ewan.
Yeah, I'm going to take this one.
Yeah, Ewan, please.
Okay, so the reason we're coming with this agenda item is to get your approval for a revised version of the Members Planning Code, which forms part of the Council's constitution. And the main reason why the planning code needs updating is because in December 2021, you approved an updated members code. And the big part of that update was a change to the way registering interests work and declaring interests at meetings. And there were some changes to the wording of the types of interests that you need to declare in the different categories. And so we need to update the members planning code to link in with that so that the two documents match up with each other. So the main thing, as I say, in the planning code is we just remove reference to the old categories of interest, and we've added in the new categories of interest which are required to be declared. We've made some other sort of minor changes as well, just to make the document read more clearly. We tried to make the paragraphs around predetermination and predisposition a little bit more clearly for you to understand. Some other minor housekeeping matters. But as I say, the main thing is the register of interest, which needs to be updated. So we're asking for your approval for the updated document, and then it will go to corporate governance, and they will have a look at it as well. And it is planned to go to council in December for a final approval and to become part of the council's constitution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ewan. Anthony, did you want to add anything to that?
Only briefly to remind members, this is quite an important document. It does pay well that you do spend some time reading it and understanding it. We're doing some training after this meeting, and we're going to have a little short session that covers this code. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Anthony. The recommendation for this is on page 48. Anybody wish to speak on this item? Mr. Fillimore.
Only that hearing Ewan, we cannot have two policies that are not aligned with each other, so very happy to support it. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else wish to speak? Mr. Grimbley, seconded. Did you wish to speak, Mr. Grimbley? No. Anyone else? Well, it's been moved and seconded, item 9, as we approve. So all in favour of that, please? Yeah, that looks to be unanimous. Anyone against? Nobody ever pops up and does it. Okay, moving on to item numbers 10. Then, as I said before, there are no urgent items on this agenda. Item 11 is future meetings of the board proposed to take place in the following dates, all at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The dates are printed on the agenda or in the agenda. Please note that for 2023, we are moving away from having every month, and meetings will be every 5 or 6 weeks instead. There's always the opportunity to pull a meeting in if there is a desperate situation where a decision is required. Item 12 is Chairman's announcements. I'd just like to say that this was the last board meeting for Anthony Cross, who is retiring at the end of the month. Anthony joined Leicestershire County Council in September 2014 as team leader of property and environmental section of the legal department. He has been head of law in 2018. Anthony has attended most DCR meetings over the last 8 years to give the board legal advice. Anthony has also been designated scrutiny officer for Leicestershire County Council and attended meetings of the Scrutiny Commission. In that capacity, I would like to thank Anthony for his support he has provided me, especially me, and the board over the years, and wish him well in his retirement. And thank you very much, Anthony. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman.
Right.
I suppose first up, I should say on behalf of the Officer Corps, just a welcome to Julie on behalf of the Chief Executive and the Director on Governance, and wish her well. One person arrives and one person leaves, and yes, that's me leaving. I started local government in 1980, and the first committee I ever did was a planning committee in the London Borough of Barnet. That set me with a great desire and interest in planning, and I've seen it all the way through in a number of other authorities. I've enjoyed my time here. Very good local authority to work for. Planning is such an important thing. You make decisions that actually, if they're good, will stand the test of time. Thanks for your good wishes. I do wish you, Chairman, and the committee well.
Thank you, Anthony. Right, training. Now there's the thing. There's a word. Does anyone wish to have a minute before we start? Or